Hey Taola, welcome back to the Dotted Nose channel with your boy again, KG. I hope you guys are doing good and that you're having yourself a lovely day, right? So in today's tutorial, we'll be looking into the hardware components of a desktop, all right? Now, remember in the previous tutorial, we were sharing or we were learning about the laptop hardware components, all right? Now, the difference between the two is that with the laptop, which is referred to as a notebook, is that it's portable and rechargeable, right? But with a desktop, it's a home-based computer or an office-based computer. Why? Because it usually depends on the electricity within the office or at your specific home, right? Now let's dive in. I've already disassembled the components as usual. Remember, I said I will provide you guys with tutorials where I combine all of these components. But yeah, let's dive in. All right. My table is small, so I've used some of my chairs in the house just to be able to put some of the components. All right. So right here, we know we have a monitor, usually referred to as the screen of the desktop computer. Right. The icon usually on a software base, like on your operating system, would usually have the screen, right? And at the back of this monitor, you have your VGA connection where you will be able to use the VGA cable and put it in right here from the motherboard. Now, remember I said the hardware components of a desktop, pardon me for that, it usually has or it depends on the power supply within the home, meaning the electricity. So right here is where you will have your power cable, right, from the plug or the outlet of your home to the screen so that it can be able to light, right? So yeah, we have right here the screen, usually referred to as the monitor, using two connections. Remember, the VGA connection and the power cable, right? Power supply, right? It's quite simple. There's nothing complicated about it. All right. So right here, as you can see, we have the power supply of the desktop, meaning the tower itself. All right. Usually people like to refer to it as the box, but it's called a tower. I'll show you the box or the tower of how it looks like. All right. So this power supply is mounted to the tower itself. Now right here, as you can see, we have two different connections. This one is usually referred to as the male, and this one is referred to the female. Now, why? It's because this one has pins with inside, as you can see them, right? And then this one has holes, so you can use either of the connection. All right. Remember, only one cable is sufficient enough for the power supply. You don't have to have two of the cables connected and then to the outlet or the plug itself. All right. Now let's continue. Right here we have what we call SATA cables. All right. This one is for the power supply to the motherboard. I'll show you the motherboard in a bit. Remember, the motherboard is the mother of a computer. So the motherboard right here is the mother to the desktop computer, right? So right here is the power cable or supply. Once you have connected your cable from the outlet or the plug of the house, which will provide electricity to this power unit, this cable will provide power supply to the motherboard itself. All right. Then right here, all of these cables are the same. All right. But this one is very old. They're usually referred to as SATA cables. Now, a SATA cable is basically a cable that provides a channel for data correspondence, meaning from one point to the other you'll be sending data, right? But with this specifically, it provides power, hence it's a power unit. Its basic purpose, pardon me, is to provide power. All right, now there's SATA cables for the hard drive, so your hard drive needs power, all right, so that it can turn on. That's the difference between the laptop and the desktop. This one is dependent on the power supply from the house, right? So basically these cables just provide power to the other components of the desktop tower, right? Like your box, right? Moving onward, we have what we call the fan here. As you can see, usually these types of fans cools off the system within inside and prevents dust from entering the tower box itself, right? Remember, with dust, if dust is clogged up, some of the components won't be able to work properly. Now with the power supply unit or the box that I just showed you, usually they would last for a specific period of time depending on how you utilize the desktop. Remember, in departments like the police station or your nursing department, the computers are working 24/7 and they do not switch off due to the information that needs to be captured unless there is load shedding. So usually these power supply units get replaced after a specific period of time. Hence, when you switch it on, sometimes it does not switch on because it's tired, right? Then let's go to the VGA cable that I was referring to earlier on. Now this is how a VGA cable looks like. It's usually blue, some are red, some are white, and usually they would have pins within inside depending on the motherboard itself. Now with the pins, like I said, it's male. These ones are males, and the connection point to the motherboard is the female point, where it will usually have holes. All right, so this is how a VGA cable looks like. It's called a VGA cable that connects from the motherboard to the monitor itself to provide display of what you were doing with your activities and tasks that you may be required to do at your work, and if you're playing games at home, right? Now these are old SATA cables. They provide data, all right? Data, not provide data necessarily so, but they usually carry data like your media files from one point to the other. Let's say you are having your what can I call it? For instance, your media files, like your pictures, they go from they're being transported within these cables to the specific destination, from your hard drive to your USB, like your memory stick. Pardon me for that. Your memory stick. This is what transports it. All right. These are called VGA cables. Now with these connections, they are female because of what? They have holes within them. All right. But these are old ones for old desktop computer. But I'll show you guys in a bit of how the latest have been developed. All right. Then right here we have the optical disk unit. So at the back of it, as you can see, we have male connections. All right, whereby you usually put in the one connection that comes from the power supply to the optical disk unit, and then you would have the one cable, which is a SATA cable, that would actually get what is this, where you will transfer your files from the CD to not hardware, but hard drive. Pardon me for that. Like as you can see right here, it's written down there below. There you have your SATA power and your SATA signal. Alright, so we are not usually using these anymore unless you have CDs, because we are using memory sticks to store data. With CDs you can be able to store up to a certain amount of data within the disk, and hence it was very limited. I think the last one that I used was 7.5 or 8 gig CD, where I would store my data when I was in high school. And you would have CDs that you can permanently store data on, and whilst with the other you can only have a removable, like you would usually send data and be able to remove data from the disk itself, right? But we have moved from there, because with CDs you'd find, or DVDs, you'd find scratches, and it wouldn't work for forever, for instance, right? So we have moved from that to USB devices or your memory sticks, right? But before this generation or this type of unit, we would use floppy disks. So with floppy disks, they are square, those square ones, and then they would have a metal component. You remember most. It usually would work just as a memory stick, right? So that's the main difference. We moved from there to disks, and then from disks we have moved to memory sticks. Who knows in the future what we might move into. Alright. So moving onward, you know what is this, right? It's a RAM, like we have discussed in the previous tutorial. It's a random access memory component, which usually stores your programs. Alright. So this one is a 1 gig. And the nicest part about a desktop is that you can at least have up to 4 slots with the RAM, meaning you can have 4 8 gigs depending on your CPU. Alright, so this is how the RAM looks like with for the desktop. Pardon me for that. And then moving onward, I'm just gonna show you guys this component is called the CPU. Alright, this is how a CPU looks like. Now as you can see on the top left corner, you have your triangle there. Usually this is a signal for you that this is where you need, or how you need to put your CPU to the motherboard. Usually these types of CPUs come with pins. I don't know if you can see these pins. You see them right there. So with the motherboard itself for this type of CPU, it's called the female, whilst the CPU itself, it's a male component, meaning there are holes within the slot of the CPU itself on the motherboard. Alright, let me show you the motherboard of how it looks like. It looks like this. Alright, and behind there usually you would have your VGA connection. Now you can see right here we have a VGA component where it's a male, and then we have a female. Because we have a male VGA cable, we would usually use this one, the female component, to connect both of them. And then this one as well as a VGA connection. You do not have to have all of the cables. It's just providing you guys with variant or more options, so to say. Then we would have this is an old connection of mouse and a keyboard, where you would usually connect your mouse and a keyboard. Then we have those USB ports where you usually connect your phone with a USB cable or your memory stick, right? And then right here we have a LAN connection for the internet, your speaker, your mic, and also the other component there. All right, I'm not quite sure what it is called. but I will look into it, and you will find it on down there below. All right, on the description box, all right, of the tutorial. Well, for the CPU, usually you would open this lid like this, and then you just put your CPU and connect it to this specific slot for the CPU. I'm just gonna go ahead and put it in. Pardon me for that. Right. Now you need to make sure that it's stable. All right. So this is where it sits. All right, where I pointed. Usually you would have your triangle there as well. All right. But then moving onward, this is a RAM slot. Like I said, you usually have up to 4 slots, but with this motherboard it uses 2 slots. Then you would have your adapters. With a desktop you can add your network adapter, Wi-Fi adapter, and so forth. So these are the 3 adapters that you can be able to utilize in order for you guys to have more connection, even your graphics card and so forth. Power supply units or connection, these are the power supply from the power supply unit, as I showed you in the beginning. And yeah, that's about it. Some of the hardware specifics, specifically the motherboard, they come already with embedded CPU, meaning you do not have to connect this type of CPU. All right, because with this type of CPU you would have this fan. Now with this fan, you have a metal component that separates the fan and the CPU. Usually this is provided so that it can cool off the CPU whilst it processes the data files that you are working on. Alright. So specifically, the main task for the fan separated with this metal piece is for it to cool the system down. Alright. So just remember that it usually sits on top of the CPU, and there's a specific paste that you need to utilize in order for the CPU and the metal piece to sit together. All right. So yeah, that's about it. All right. Remember, if you have any questions, please do ask. All right. Moving onward, we have the keyboard. Remember, the laptop is quite different. I know everybody knows the keyboard, and it already has a wire connected to it, like a USB cable, and then you can just insert it there where there is a slot for it on the motherboard. But nowadays we're using wireless keyboards. Usually they would depend on a battery, like these small batteries that you find in your remotes and other stuff, right? For myself, I utilize a wireless mouse, like I said, and right here is a USB connection that I was talking about. Just insert it to the motherboard slot, and I will be ready to go. All right. Just to show you guys what I was referring to. You see inside there are batteries, right? So yeah, you usually have those batteries. You will have to buy them every now and then. It's good to have these kind of components just to lessen the amount of cables that you would have within your house, right? Rushing through, we have also the cover of the tower that I will show you in a bit. So right here is a power cable. Usually these would be your USB slots, and then right here you would have your mic connection as well as your headphone connection. Up top here, the optical disk or the floppy drive disk component. All right. Sorry about the noise. If you can hear the noise, it's upstairs. but if you cannot hear it, it's fine. I have cats and people knocking up the stairs. So this is the tower that I was referring to. All right. Usually people refer to it as the box, right? But it's called the tower, desktop tower, where you would mount all of these pieces that I just showed you, all of them together on this specific tower. All right. And then, yeah, that's about it. Let me just show you how the latest Sata cable looks like. The hard drive, you know, it's not different from the one that I showed you guys in the previous tutorial. It's pretty much the same, right? So these are the latest Sata cables. They are short and long ones that connects from your hard drive to the motherboard, your hard drive, to the motherboard, like I said, as well as what else is there, from your power supply to the motherboard as well, because with the power supply it already has. All right, now these are the latest ones. As you can see, these ones are females. All right, they have holes right there. All right, so that's how they look. The old ones uses circles, while these ones uses this kind of connection, just as I showed you. So just wait for a second. I just want to show you something. Alright, there we go. Alright, now this is the kind of latest power supply that we have. Alright, power cable connection right there, and then the SATA piece that I was referring to. Now the hard drive, you know, it looks like this. The reason why I put mine like this is because I don't want it to be loosened up, because I have mounted my own motherboard to a drawer. So just to put it in the drawer and back, and then I have back and forth, right, just to create space inside the house. And that's where you can see that I have done most of my work right here. Like I said, you would have your fan. This is the hard drive, and this one is the one that prevents us from the dust. But on my table, at the back of it, there's holes where all of these components can breathe. Remember, it's very crucial that these components breathe, right? So yeah, guys, that's about it. If you have any questions, please do comment down below. If there's something that I've left out and you know it, please share with us as well. I hope you guys have had a productive or have learned something from this tutorial. Please do like, share and subscribe these videos so that we can upgrade our skills, so that we can prevent even ourselves from becoming victims of identity theft. It's better that you know these components and how they work, as well as be able to familiarize yourself with how computers work, so that people cannot scam you, right? Because we are being scammed nowadays. It's very important that you do so and be able to learn. I know when you look at my video duration, you're like, I cannot do this, but it's very informative. It's very informative, and I advise you guys to look into these videos, because one day you will need these tutorials or these skills. Remember, we have shifted from paperwork to digitized platforms, so it's very important. Have yourself a wonderful day. Have yourself a lovely night. I'll see you guys in the next tutorial. Away.